Hello and welcome to What the F Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. Welcome to Day 8. The Department of Health and Human Services diverted millions of dollars in federal funds intended for vaccine research and public health emergencies to pay for unrelated salaries, administrative expenses, furniture removal, news subscriptions, and legal services. In 2018, an unidentified whistleblower claimed that the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response had been misusing money since at least 2010, which Congress had allocated for the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. An HHS Inspector General report says the agency was unable to account for $517.8 million from 2007 to 2016. And as recently as fiscal year 2019, more than $25 million was improperly taken from BARDA. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security warned of ideologically-motivated violent extremists in the United States. The DHS bulletin said the threat of violence, spurred by grievances fueled by false narratives about the unfounded claims about the 2020 election and anger over COVID-19 restrictions and police use of force, will persist for weeks following Biden's inauguration. The National Terrorism Advisory System was last used a year ago to warn of a potential retaliation by Iran for the U.S. assassination of Iranian military commander Qasem Soleimani. A year before that, DHS highlighted the threat from foreign terrorist groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. In D.C., House and Senate Democrats introduced legislation that would make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. The bill, first introduced in 2013, would give the district full authority over local issues and would grant it full representation in Congress. While the bill could pass the House, it is unlikely to clear the Senate because Democrats would need to overcome a filibuster in order for the legislation to pass, meaning they would need at least 10 Republicans to join them. Most GOP lawmakers, however, are opposed to the legislation because D.C.'s congressional representation would likely be Democratic. Democrats also reintroduced the Raise the Wage Act, which would gradually increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025. The current federal minimum wage is $7.25 and hasn't been increased since 2009. The majority of Republicans oppose the measure. Moving on, the Biden administration started staffing a bipartisan committee to study reforms to the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary. Between 9 and 15 members are expected to be appointed to the commission, which will study structural changes as part of a broader court review and reform effort. Biden, who says he is not a fan of court packing, proposed the commission in response to the Republican push to confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court just weeks before the November election. Biden's administration will also resume contact with Palestinian leaders and restore U.S. contributions to the UN agency that provides aid to Palestinians. Trump's policies overwhelmingly favored the interest of Israel's government, and the Trump administration closed the Palestine Liberation Organization's office in Washington, D.C., stopped contributions to the UN Relief and Works Agency, moved the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognized Israeli sovereignty, and presented a peace proposal which left all Israeli West Bank settlements in place. The Biden administration also paused arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates as part of a review of Trump administration agreements worth billions of dollars. The Trump administration pushed through arms sales to Riyadh and Abu Dhabi in 2020 as part of agreements to normalize relations with Israel. In 2019, Trump declared a national security emergency in order to authorize a multi-billion-dollar sale of arms to Saudi Arabia, which bypassed congressional review. Biden also affirmed the United States' commitment to NATO, saying that he strongly backs the alliance's collective defense. In 2017, Trump declined to pledge unwavering commitment to a provision in the NATO Charter in which members commit to rise to the defense of others in the pact. Trump also called the NATO alliance obsolete during his first presidential campaign. Back home, Biden replaced the director of the nation's immigration court system. During James McHenry's tenure, the Trump administration placed quotas on the number of cases that immigration judges should complete, while restricting their ability to grant asylum, close cases, and suspend deportation proceedings for certain immigrants. Gene King will take over on an acting basis as director of the Executive Office for Immigration Review. And finally, Biden warned that the climate crisis poses an existential threat that needs to be addressed with a greater sense of urgency. Biden then signed executive orders directing the government to elevate climate change to a national security priority, pause oil and gas leasing on federal land, conserve 30% of the country's lands and waters in the next 10 years, double offshore wind energy, and move to an all-electric federal vehicle fleet, among other changes. Biden said, "We have already waited too long to deal with this climate crisis. We can't wait any longer. We see it with our own eyes. We feel it in our bones. It's time to act."
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.